Well, hello and welcome to another week on my allotment. And everybody living in the UK will be very aware of the weather. I don't think I can ever complain about the rain and the water on my plot again, having seen some of the pictures and images of the flooding this week. I've been saying to you for months how wet it's been, but this last couple of weeks has exceeded all records. And you know, I really feel for those people who are struggling with flooding and so on. So it's all relative, so I'm not going to complain about my plot. However, what I will say is, you know, and looking at what I've been doing since I last made a video, I've been digging deep, and I've created what I've now christened the Hanley canal. It's a bit of a posh name for a small ditch around my plot, but that's what I've done, and I'll show you some clips in a minute. I think I've said before that actually the reason my plot floods so much is not because of the rain that falls on it, although clearly that doesn't help. It's the water that flows in from everywhere else, up the field, across the other top plots, and it all accumulates. My plot is in a very, very subtle bowl, and it all sits here. So I'll show you in a minute what I've been doing, and I think I've solved it. So I'm very happy with that. I'll show you show you one clip in a minute of anything that I've sown, and it's only on one windowsill, so it's not a lot. I really am restraining myself this year. The cold and wet weather, although you know it's been a mild winter, the wet weather particularly is just, you know, even if it would stop raining today, and it's not due to stop raining for at least 3 weeks, the forecast can look about 3 weeks ahead, and it's just rain every day. Even if it was to dry up today, it would be weeks before I could put anything in the ground here. So there's no point in start sowing seeds and having them sitting in the greenhouse, getting all leggy, waiting to go in ground that is still waterlogged. So I am managing to restrain myself. So I have sown a couple of things, but let's cut away now and just have a quick look at them and see what I've sown. Don't hold your breath, it's not very exciting. Cauliflower, broccoli or calabrese, one lot of tomatoes, 2 lots of tomatoes, and the leeks are just starting to poke their heads up. And that's it. That's all I've sown. Having said that, there are also a few pots or trays of broad bean seeds in the greenhouse, but they haven't germinated yet, so there's no point in showing you pots full of soil. So apart from some broad beans and what I've just shown you on the windowsill, that's it. In the next couple of weeks, as we move out of February into March, I might start, but you know, because the sun doesn't shine, because it's always raining, there's no, the greenhouse doesn't warm up at all. It's still quite cold in the greenhouse. So, you know, even if I start sowing in the greenhouse, because the sun doesn't shine, it's not going to, I doubt things will germinate. So that's the situation there at the moment. However, let's have a quick look at my major job this week, which I'm rather pleased with, and the Hanley canal. Well, initially I'm making more mess than I'm solving, but I've put a bit of a bund in there from the ditch I've dug. And it's not a big ditch, it's about 8 inches deep, about 6 inches across. I've put a slab there, which is the start of the ditch, so I don't step down into it. And then under that, I've lined the bottom of the ditch with some tiles I've got, and I'm hoping that it goes under that bench, and it's carrying on along there. I'm going to go around the edge, and then I need to speak to Liam about going down that side of the golf net, which protects me from the golf balls. And of course that's his property, so I need to speak to him before I go digging holes. But that's the plan. So we shall see if it stops the water running down this field and through there. Of course it's got to go somewhere. I can't just dig a ditch, which is effectively just a long hole. It's got to run off somewhere, and it's got to be deeper as it runs to allow the water to flow. So there's some work to be done yet, but it's a start. Well, I started digging this ditch couple of days ago, and unfortunately I haven't got here quite in time because it's a blue sky now, but we have just had a deluge to end all deluges. Deluges? Anyway, it's rained blimmin' hard. So I've got up here eager to find out if my ditch, which currently goes nowhere in particular, is having any effect and whether I'd have this river running through my plot. And I'm pleased to report I can't say it's working because I don't know where that water's going yet. It just could be pouring out at the other side of my plot. However, digging this ditch here and feeding it across the back of the plot, I don't know if you can see on whether that shows up, but it's pouring into my ditch and it's not running through here. So in my own limited way, I'm going to declare that a partial success so far. And the soil I took out, or some of it, I've put a small dam there. There were some daffodils amazingly growing in it, so I've stuck them on top and we'll see how they get on. But you can see that that dam there is feeding the water round to here, where it would normally be coming through the plot, but it's not. So let's find out where it's going. Well, the ditch goes under those blue tubs. It zigzags through, because I didn't go onto the golf driving range in the end. I thought I'd better keep it to myself. It goes under this improvised cold frame, and because I haven't gone any further, it's pouring out here. However, so the plot's still soaking. However, I'm going to continue with that now, and hopefully the water will feed on down the side of my plot. I'm going to follow this net all the way down, where I'm thinking of doing a soak away. Right, I've finished putting in the Hanley canal, and it starts there under that slab and those slates, and that's where it's dropping in from the field, even though it's still standing water. It's not flowing onto the allotment, so it cuts it off at source there. It goes along under those slates and under the bench, under these blue tubs. Oh, the levels drop significantly. That's because it's flowing out the other end, obviously. Excuse me while I mix my gazelle-like and hippo-like movements over that fence. So it goes all the way down the line of this protected net. It is still flowing, although greatly reduced. Behind my bench, I've managed to save most of the daffodil bulbs. Here it cuts through. I've got to put that fence back up, and then it goes down, and the soil I've taken out, all the big clods of turf, I've used to bank up so that it doesn't overflow onto the golf driving range car park. And it comes down to here. There's a junction here where I'm trying to drain off this lower portion. I've dug a small drain, and it is working. It's flowing through, and it comes down to here, where thankfully, conveniently for me, Melvin on the lower plot here he's dug the same sort of thing, and he's put a drainage pipe in to drain off from the top of his plot down to the bottom. So I've just fed onto his, so my water is now flowing down. So I better go and check what it's doing down there, just thinking about it. Hopefully it's not flowing into his shed, or he'll be none too happy. But the Hanley canal is complete, and I'm hoping, as we've got a few heavy showers coming over the next few days, I'm hoping that will put an end to it flowing onto my allotment. Very happy with my work. I have a pond full of frog spawn. So down at this end of the plot, this is the downhill end, so this is where I've showed you in the past where I've had a lagoon, and this bed here has been underwater with the plastic on it. And so even after the storm, and we've had torrential rain this morning, all morning, it's only now that the sun has come out, and yet still I really haven't got it that bad, and I'm convinced that is all down to the Hanley Canal. So very, very happy. And let's take a walk across. I did walk up when I came to the plot this morning. This is the way I came up, so I have had a look at it. I just love to have been up here yesterday to see how much was in it when it was flowing at its best. But even now, a day after the main storm, it's still flowing. So I'm really pleased. I was a Royal Engineer for 30 years, so I should know how to dig a ditch, shouldn't I? As there's very little else going on the plot at the moment until the weather improves, I'd just like to do one of my little 5-minute health chats. I hope you don't mind, and for those that are new to the channel, I just like to provoke thought. I'm not trying to upset anyone. It's just my take on the research I've done, because I've become fascinated with health since I work generally in amongst the older community, and I see all the sickness and illness, and you know, it gets quite upsetting at times to see the state people are in. And on the whole, not always, but on the whole, the sickness and diseases are due to things that they've done to themselves through diet and lifestyle. Because, and I genuinely don't think people understand just how directly your health is affected by the things that you eat and exercise and so on and so forth. Nature is a very synergistic, holistic entity. Everything you do, everything you think, everything you say, every action you take has a causal effect on your body. And there's physical health and mental health. 20% of the blood in your body goes to the brain. The brain is very blood intensive. And if your blood is polluted with, you know, carcinogenic foods and toxicity and so on, you know, mental health is going to be affected. I mean, if you think about it, you know, the young people of today, it's about as good as we've had it as a species. You know, you haven't got to worry about being eaten by predators. You're not having to fight the cold and the intense heat. There are no wars. You don't have to fight. Everything is given to, I mean, you know, their parents are as affluent as they've ever been. Even the people in this country who are in so-called poverty, compared to, you know, the third world, we have, I mean, how we can use the word poverty is beyond me. So, life is good, and yet mental illness is an epidemic. Now, how is that? Why is that? In all this talk about, you know, the NHS must provide this and that, nobody's saying what's happening. Why is this the way it is? And I'm not about to start talking about mental health. I know nothing about it. But there's no doubt the mind is linked to the body. It's all one. And, you know, more and more we're discovering that the intestines, the stomach, which is the majority of our immune system is so closely linked to the brain. So, you know, you can take all the psychotic and antipsychotic drugs you want. If you're eating crap, your brain is full of crap. So it's all closely linked. And that leads me nicely to something I've noticed. You know, my parents have had joint replacements, and everybody in the older generation. There are more and more hip replacements, knee replacements. I've now heard of a shoulder replacement. I didn't know they were doing those. Now, why is this? The current older generation have led physically fairly easy lives. Now, there are exceptions to that, but on the whole, across society, we are not exercising our joints excessively. We are not wearing out our bodies. Why are everybody's joints giving up? Well, again, I've done a little bit of research, and don't take my word for it, do your own, but it is interesting. Turns out, I'm sure you've all heard of synovial fluid. If you haven't, it's the fluid that surrounds each and every one of those major joints, the hips, the knees and so on. And it's a bit like oil in an engine. It keeps the moving parts cool and smooth and prevents abrasion and wear and so on. Now, synovial fluid is just a posh phrase for superfiltrated blood. Synovial fluid is made from blood. Now, if you're eating beef burgers and hot dogs and Kentucky Fried Chicken and McDonald's and all this other crap, that's what your blood's made from. So, over a lifetime, and of course I'm not saying the older generation are eating crap. Most of them eat, you know, fairly normal meals, but they're full of meat and milk and carcinogenic products and so on and so forth. And over a lifetime, not eating a pure diet, the blood is full of particles. They can't be seen by the naked eye, but your blood is poor. And so your synovial fluid made from your blood is equally poor. And there are particles in it. And over a lifetime, these particles, like iron filings in your engine oil, slowly start to cause wear. And that's why the joints are in the state they're in. And over a lifetime, you know, I know a lady who went to school with me. She'll be in her 50s now. She's had both knees replaced. She's been a teacher all her working life. Never run for a bus. And she's had both knees replaced. That's shocking. So, that's how closely linked our food is to our health. It's just one example. I watched a lecture by a lady recently on YouTube who works in fertility. She's a qualified doctor and a research scientist in America, and she deals with fertility. And she's now taken on this holistic approach of whole food, plant-based, and she does that with her patients, those that are receptive. And she says it's changed her whole approach, how many ladies she sees that can't have babies who go on a whole food, plant-based diet, and it improves every corner of your body, every part of your body, every organ, every artery, every capillary, and they become fertile and they have babies. Isn't that wonderful? So, yeah, a whole food, plant-based diet affects every part of your body, including your mental health. And, you know, knee and hip joints are just an interesting aspect of that. And with that in mind, I have written a list. And this list is in no particular order. I'm just going to read them off as I've written them down. These are all the chronic diseases and syndromes and problems that people have today that can be prevented, reversed, and sometimes cured using a whole food, plant-based diet. So, I'll read them in no particular order before I disappear in a fog of smoke. Acne, lupus, MS, sinus inflammation, arthritis, cataracts, osteoporosis, neuropathy, kidney stones, type 1 and type 2 diabetes, allergies, Parkinson's disease, high blood pressure, cancer, Crohn's disease, irritable bowel syndrome, infertility, premenstrual syndrome, migraines, Alzheimer's, heart disease, gout, asthma, dementia, eczema and depression. Now that list isn't exhaustive, but you know there's an awful lot there, and I'll say that again. All these can be reduced in impact, reversed, cured, and/or prevented. So if you have any of those, why wouldn't you research it? What have you got to lose? You know. Anyway, it's food for thought. That's a good pun. It may or may not be of interest to you, but you know, they do say that those who don't have time for a healthy diet, sooner or later have to make time for illness. So I mention this because, you know, it matters to me. The people around me, their health, your health matters. Maybe it doesn't matter to me if I don't know you, but it matters to you. So why not do a little bit of research and have a look at it? I can give you two very good examples close to home, and I'm sure they won't mind me mentioning this, but my daughter has recently strictly given up dairy. She was pretty much whole food plant-based before, but this January, after Christmas, she gave up dairy completely, and she has found that her period pains have stopped. She used to get period or pains in the tummy area the day before her period started, and then through the period. It's now stopped. And my wife, you know, she's my sort of age, that's all I'll say, in case she watches this and I get into trouble. But, you know, she works in an environment with 20 odd other ladies, and they're all of the same age group, and they're all going through, been through, or about to go through the menopause. And my wife breezed through. Now, no symptoms, no hot flushes, nothing. Now, that may have a certain amount of genetic luck in it or whatever, but she eats a whole food, plant-based diet, and all these other women, many of them are suffering all sorts of, you know, they constantly have the windows open because they're sweating in hot flushes. Anyway, food for thought. You may or may not be interested, but I find it fascinating. And I'm 56, 57 this year. Never had a day in hospital, certainly not in my adult life. And you know, one of these days something will happen, but I'm doing my best to avoid the health services, which, you know, if you want to stay healthy, you've got to avoid the health service. So, I hope that's of interest to you. And whilst on the subject of healthy, nutrient-dense food, I've picked some Brussels sprouts. I've got 4 stalks still left out there. And, you know, the outer, I don't know if you can see that, the outer leaves look a little bit brown, but I know, having done it with others, that when I prepare these tonight, you peel away the brown outer layers, and inside the Brussels sprouts are fine. Now, we're midway, just a bit more through February, and when you look at the seed packet for these, it said, you know, they will store, or if you keep them on the stalk, they'll be okay till from sort of, I think it was September to November. They're an early variety, clubroot resistant. And here so you can eat them from September to November. And here we are late February, and they're still absolutely fine. So, you know, these seed packets are a guide, and you know, that's all they're meant to be. But yeah, we're still eating lots of Brussels sprouts, and Cheryl's now upped her intake each meal to 2 Brussels sprouts. That's commitment for you. So, on that healthy, nutritious note, that'll be it for this week. I hope I haven't bored you with my health talk. It's provided for food for thought, that's all, nothing more, nothing less. So, all being well, as long as you remain healthy, and I do too, I shall see you next week. Look after yourselves, and bye for now.